Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Laura Gully. I'm with Generate Health, the organization that coordinates the Flourish St. Louis initiative. Thank you for raising your hand to help end infant mortality in St. Louis. You came here today because you want to help make St. Louis become a place where babies flourish. You came here today because you know healthy babies lead to healthy families, and that leads to a successful, thriving community for everyone. You came here today so all babies in the St. Louis area can celebrate a happy and healthy first birthday. Flourish St. Louis purposefully sought out people from different backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives to join our action teams. Those different perspectives will be our strength because the reasons why babies are dying are so complex, and we can't solve it by looking through just one perspective or sector. We need to hear from families about the challenges they face and ideas they have from living through the loss of a child or premature birth. We need to hear from healthcare, health insurance, and transportation industries about their unique expertise and ways we can work together to improve our region's systems. We need to hear from faith community about ways to inspire hearts and reach people at the neighborhood level through St. Louis. We need to hear from organizations that provide support services to hundreds of families every day and are experts at navigating each of their own areas of concern. We need to hear from regional planners and civic leaders who have a pulse on what's broadly going on in our region and can help us connect into existing efforts and accelerate change. So thank you for coming together to take on this important cause. Now, to give you a preview of our time together today, let me share what we'll cover. First, we will share with you what we've learned about the loss of babies and premature birth in the region and how important a racial equity lens is to this issue. Then we'll share information about how and why Flourish St. Louis was formed and the team that's in place to support the action teams as you move forward. We'll also cover information about what we mean when we say racial equity and infant mortality and how it must apply to our work. Everyone in our community can play a role in reducing infant mortality in St. Louis. But you, along with our cabinet members and partners, are some of the first who have stepped up to say, I want to be a part of this. We can make positive change happen for babies. So thank you. We look forward to hearing your perspectives and are honored to work with you. Let's begin with a bit of background. In spite of our region's outstanding medical facilities and our best intentions, babies are dying in some St. Louis neighborhoods at rates 3 times worse than our national average. Rates that are worse than developing countries like Vietnam and Uzbekistan and Syria. In fact, all the regions in orange and red colors on this map have higher infant death rates than the national average. And I don't know about you, but I don't think that's acceptable. Now, picture the kindergarten classroom you were in when you grew up, the children that were around you. In St. Louis, we lose an equivalent of 15 kindergarten classrooms of children each year to infant death. Think of the 15 kindergarten classrooms sitting empty. That's lost potential. Doctors, lawyers, healthcare workers, social workers. These are classrooms that should be filled with happy and healthy children. There are also huge gaps in the health of our babies in our region. Black babies in St. Louis are 3 times more likely to die than white babies. This gap is so deep that if we keep doing what we've always done, it could take almost 15 years for the survival rate of Black babies to catch up with those of white babies. And often people point to this disparity in this slide as an economic issue only. However, an African American woman in St. Louis who makes $250,000 a year or more is still 2 times more likely to lose her baby than a poor white woman. So there's a huge importance of applying a racial equity lens to this work. It's critical to changing this inequity. In our region, premature births cause more infant deaths than accidents, genetic problems, and all other causes combined. And the babies who do survive, being born too soon or too small, don't have an easy life. When a baby is born too early, the family faces a stressful new world. And instead of taking home a healthy newborn, families are faced with the new reality of having to provide long-term specialized care for that child. Those of us who haven't suffered the loss of a child or had to care for a premature baby with major health concerns can only try to imagine the family's heartbreak, grief, and stress. But this loss impacts the rest of us too. It hurts our entire community. All St. Louisans should have the opportunity to make the choices that allow them to have a healthy pregnancy and healthy baby. But many do not have that choice. They face barriers and challenges that block them from having access to things they need to flourish. Lack of access to education, living wage jobs, health care, and healthy foods, as well as horrible neighborhood and housing conditions, and the stress families face when dealing with these challenges can all impact the health of mom and her baby. Our region's families and babies deserve better. And now, as you can see, reducing infant deaths is a complex issue. And for decades, individual organizations in St. Louis have made heroic efforts to save babies and improve the health and well-being of moms. But a problem impacted by all of these different factors can't be solved by one single organization. We must bring these different health, social, and economic pieces of the puzzle together in order to accelerate change and create a lasting reduction in infant deaths in our region. And there hasn't been a way to do that until now. That is why Flourish St. Louis was formed. We're a new approach to addressing this complex issue. Flourish St. Louis believes that our region needs to come together in new ways to make this a place where babies thrive and families flourish. Our vision is that every baby born in the St. Louis region celebrates a happy and healthy first birthday. We'd like to thank our initial funder, the Missouri Foundation for Health, for funding and supporting this initiative to make this new approach possible. Generate Health serves as the backbone for Flourish St. Louis with a role to organize and coordinate the initiative. Flourish St. Louis is making meaningful progress by bringing together different areas of our community to solve our region's high infant mortality rate. Working together, we will develop new paths and ways of thinking for solving our region's high infant mortality rate. We're using a collective impact model for creating social change, a proven method for creating a new level of progress in communities. And in St. Louis, we have individuals, organizations that are doing great work to support families in having healthy pregnancies and births. And to some degree, we also have systems of agencies and policies to coordinate, like services such as shelters and food services and childcare. But for a complex problem, we need a much more integrated, coordinated approach where our systems work side by side in ways that align to accelerate change in our region. Flourish St. Louis began its work by speaking to the ultimate experts on this issue, which are families who are raising preterm babies and have lived through a loss of a baby. And listening to the community will continue to be a critical part of our action team's work. But so far, we conducted community listening sessions with 350 family members to hear their stories and understand the barriers they face. Then we looked at the research and data and medical opinions surrounding preterm births and infant deaths in St. Louis. By listening to the community and looking at data, we found that moms and dads could do everything right, but there are barriers that don't make it easy for families to get the care needed. Please know that as an action team member, you won't be tackling this issue on your own. In addition to your teammates, there are several groups on this initiative that will support the action teams in their role. As action team members, your role is to listen to the community to understand why things are the way they are, Look at what's worked well to help moms and babies in St. Louis and other communities. Work as a team to develop an action plan. Partner with local organizations already working on the issue to take the action plan steps. Determine how we'll measure the progress on the action plans. You'll also have support from Generate Health staff who will help as a backbone guiding this process, supporting collaboration, and ensuring continuous communication throughout this effort, while focusing on building awareness. The Cabinet will continue to provide governance and oversight, ensuring alignment happens inside and out, and guarding the mission and values, making sure that they are a priority in our region. Our think tank, which we call the Gurus of Our Data, will help us continually focus on the data and research, helping us to generate ideas and knowledge, and also develop a shared measurement system to evaluate what we're doing. Now we want to cover a key topic that will guide our work as we move forward, and this is the issue of equity around infant mortality. Racial equity refers to the capacity of our region to create, manage, and distribute resources in a way that gives people from all racial backgrounds the opportunity to thrive. From the data, we know that there are large gaps in birth outcomes for babies based on their race. That's why it's critical that we apply a racial equity lens to the action plans you, as a team, develop. And now I'll turn it over to Jill Thompson, who will share with you information about racial equity and how we move forward.
Thank you, Laura. I'm pleased to be here today to really share this important information. And the next set of slides are ones we're borrowing from Forward Through Ferguson. They were the result of the Ferguson Commission, who had a year-long study of disparities. The most glaring disparities were by race. The data suggests time and again that our institutions and existing systems are not equal, and that this has racial repercussions. Black people in the region feel those repercussions when it comes to law enforcement, the justice system, housing, education, income, and especially health. The events of Ferguson remind us to consider our systems and the outcomes they produce through a racial equity lens. This lens reminds us that the income gap between white and black has grown 40% since 1967, and that the wealth gap remains larger than it was in South Africa in 1970. This statement by Francis Slay points out how important this issue is. And if we look at the region, life expectancy differs by nearly 40 years depending on the zip code. In mostly white suburban Wildwood, Missouri, the life expectancy is 91.4 years. In the mostly black inner-ring suburbs of Kinloch, Missouri, life expectancy is just 55.9 years. And now let's go to an even younger group, to an issue that I know everyone in this room understands, and that's the issue of babies dying, infant mortality. As you can see from this slide, each of those categories, Missouri, St. Louis City, and St. Louis County, the infant death rates are broken down by race. And as you can see, in each of those three areas, the African American infant mortality rate is almost 3 times that of the whites. So what do we mean when we talk about racial equity? And again, Forward Through Ferguson has given us some clarity around this. Racial equity is not the same as diversity. Diversity means a variety of people, but it doesn't mean that this variety of people are treated equitably. Racial equity is not the same as inclusion. Inclusion means representation. And racial equity is not the same as equality. Equality means sameness, everybody being treated the same, or everyone receiving the same exact services. So what do we mean by equity? When we talk about racial equity, we are talking about a future state in which race no longer predicts your social and economic outcomes. Equity is measured by outcomes. Right now, if you are Black, we can predict that your baby is 3 times more likely to die. We want a region where race is no longer predictive of birth outcomes. The birth outcomes won't be predicted based on race. Put another way, racial equity is about justice and fairness. So here's a visual that can help us understand this. This is equity. Regardless of the need, everybody gets the same thing, the same services. But you can see it doesn't help the poor short little guy see over the fence, which is the outcome. Equity is acknowledging that not everyone's needs are equal and working to give everyone a fair, equal outcome. The key is the outcome. We want everyone to be able to see over the fence. So I want you to think a minute about little p policy as where you are at the organizational level, and look for micro inequities. Interpersonally, think about where are you on your own journey of understanding your privilege and power positions. Have you named your unconscious bias? Organizationally, can your clients speak to how a budget is created and where the dollars are allocated and why? Do we know when we've crossed the line from empowering our clients to enabling them? Does your organization reflect the population you serve? And we can take this a step further, from equality to equity to liberation. The challenge for all of us in the health professions is to think about outcomes, to think about the people we are here to serve, and to think beyond equality to equity, and finally to liberation. So how would we shift if we were to focus on liberation? Well, one of the key strategies that was applied to the Fergus Commission was radical listening. And that involves trusting community members to be the best solvers of their problems and the ultimate experts. That's why Flourish has engaged over 350 community members to give direction to this movement. It also involves asking for individuals' ideas and listening without judgment, criticizing, or filtering based on our own conditioning of what's right and wrong. Radical listening is also acting. Has this body of leaders done intentional work across our organizations to ensure that we have shored up or linkages, handoffs, removed any redundant processes or paperwork that allows for ease of care coordination? Don't all babies matter? I know talking about race makes people uncomfortable, but what we saw very clearly through the Ferguson Commission's work is that the data says time and again that race matters. The data related to infant mortality matters related to race. The data says that the most glaring disparities are racial disparities. If we solve for the least of us, those who are suffering the most, those who have the worst outcomes, we'll help everyone. Chairman and CEO of AT&T, Randall Stephenson, served on the Ferguson Commission, and he often heard people, when you would hear the phrase Black Lives Matter, he would get a little bit angry about that. Because then people would say, well, all lives matter. But he added, when a parent says, I love my son, you don't say, what about your daughter? When we walk or run for breast cancer funding and research, we don't say, well, what about prostate cancer? And when the president says, God bless America, we don't say, shouldn't God bless all countries? So racial equity doesn't take anything away from any other group. It is striving for healthy outcomes that are not determined by race. And we have to work together to solve these problems related to racial equity. We have to infuse this racial equity lens in every sector. And yet we spend so much of our time in our silos, everybody doing their own thing. But we know human beings aren't like that. We're all complex, and our health, our housing, our education, and transportation, everything is connected. And if we no longer want racial equity to fall through the cracks, we need to see these connections, and we need to make new connections. We need to work with different organizations and institutions who touch different aspects of the lives of the people we serve, and we need to communicate and collaborate with them in new ways. That's how we can move toward racial equity. And we need to infuse racial equity into all these sectors. We are the ones to start this work. We're the ones we've been waiting for. We are the ones in our sectors and our action team that need to be applying the racial equity lens. So now what? Well, within our action teams, we are going to try to apply a racial equity lens. And we admit that this is just a starting point. And we, all of us, are going to have to learn together how to implement and engage each other to find ways to apply racial equity lens. But here's where we plan to start. We plan to start and have already started co-creating plans with community members. Again, that's those community listening sessions and asking them, where should we even start? We also want to create additional opportunities for community input. So as action teams develop their plans with community members at the table, we'll also take those new action team plans out to additional community members for additional feedback. We'll also provide some guiding questions that help us to look at these action plans through the lens of racial equity. And finally, Flourish is participating in an initiative that's called City Match Equity Institute. And we hope that we learn lessons from them. We'll be able to bring those lessons and tools into the action teams and the action plans. So again, we know this is just a start, and we have a lot to learn about making the racial equity lens alive and well within the action teams and within the work of Flourish. So hopefully this is oriented you to Flourish and racial equity. And now to talk a little bit about our action teams. We have our prenatal care action team, which is really focused on helping women get the services they need to have a healthy pregnancy, both they and their partners and family members. Infant health in an early effort will be focusing on sudden unexplained infant death. Our health communication and navigation action team is really focusing on how different organizations communicate what their services are to community folks. We've heard from the community that they're not really learning about those services that are available. And then, in addition, it's so hard to navigate them with different requirements for this one and that one. So we will really be engaging the community around finding better ways to communicate the services that are available. With transportation, we heard over and over and over again how transportation is a barrier to accessing good prenatal care, good health care, and other services that support a healthy family life. Behavioral health was another issue we heard about time and again, that if you're not healthy mentally and you're stressed out because of all the challenges that our community puts before families, it's really hard to have a healthy pregnancy. So the Behavioral Health Action Team will be addressing that. So we invite you now to really sign up for an action team. And if you're ready to be fully engaged, we're ready for you to be on these teams. You can sign up on our Flourish website, and we look forward to working with you to apply this racial equity lens and to really advance the health of our babies so that every baby born in St. Louis will have a healthy and happy first birthday. So to send you on your way, we'd like to share this brief video to inspire you to continue to make a difference for moms and babies in St. Louis. It's a video of the Leadership Council that launched this effort, talking about its importance. So we thank you for your commitment to making a difference. With your energy and enthusiasm, we can have a city where babies thrive and families flourish.
I was severely moved when I heard the statistics around infant mortality in St. Louis. When I realized there are probably what we consider third world countries who have better success rates at healthy births than we do, and to think that we live in this country where there's so much wealth and so much technology and so many opportunities, and to think that people still cannot get the care that they need in order to ensure healthy births just troubled my spirit.
Ultimately, you can determine whether or not a community is healthy or whether or not a country is healthy by looking at the health of the mother. There's a strong correlation. And the consequence of having a healthy mother is having a healthy infant. If infants are dying prematurely, the mother is not healthy, the region is not healthy, the country is not healthy.
If we care about our community and its future, then certainly we have to care about what happens in the first year of life and even up to that point.
Our kids count. Our babies count, and to lose one life is to lose too many.
I see firsthand what losing a baby does to a family, to a mom, to a dad, to the siblings, and it's a real tragedy in our community. This is not going to take billions and billions and billions of dollars to fix, It's going to take a little support from the community, all of us being on the same page, the resources that are out there now, being targeted to the things that really work, and supporting moms instead of blaming them.
Flourish is an initiative to look around the community that we live in and look at all of us together and say, hey, we recognize that we have a challenge when it comes to infant mortality. We are not where we should be. We really do need to flourish as a community. And if we do it, we must do it together. So flourish for us is all the arms and the tentacles, everyone from the people who live in our community to the next door neighbor, to the not-for-profit organization, to the school district, to the politician, all working together in unison to accomplish one thing, to make sure that our infant mortality rate goes down and our community flourishes.
I have a passion for this because I had a son, he died of SIDS, of infant mortality. So I'm in it because it touched me, as my son died was the most traumatic experience of my entire life. So to give back to the community and to help other mothers know that they can live on, regardless of having the death of a son.
I think we all should care about infant mortality because it's where we all begin. If we don't do something about infant mortality, then we hinder our ability to grow and become productive citizens.
I think as a community, St. Louis really needs to care about this issue because it impacts all of us. And the issues of health are related to education. Education is related to poverty and economic well-being. And if we can't solve these kinds of issues, we will never flourish as a community.
My hope is that our community open its heart and really embrace the children. They are our next generation, and they're going to be the future of this country.
It's a very broad sort of approach to this, whether it's housing, economics, education, all of those will contribute to decreasing infant mortality.
I think we need to involve the whole community. We need to involve physicians, family practitioners, obstetricians, pediatricians. There are so many stakeholders that can help reduce the infant mortality rate that we need to have, and we need to follow the roadmap to making changes and to improving what we are experiencing right now.
So when you have all of the main voices, all of the stakeholders, and I'm using that word because we are all stakeholders in this, to get everyone aware and accepting of one another. So you're hearing each other talk. So if you can talk to one another, from those from the neighborhood associations to the business owners, to talk about this issue, then we can come to some common agenda. So that common agenda is to make sure that there are resources for our families.
We have too many babies not making it to their first birthday healthy and happy. And the only way we're going to resolve that issue and have a substantial and sustained reduction in infant mortality is to work together within the region, across jurisdictional lines, across expertise lines, involve the community, and I think that this effort is making that happen.